Bingo. All right. Well, good morning or good afternoon, I guess. 12:10. Hopefully everybody on the line can hear me well. I want to welcome you to the October Quarterly HR Roundtable. I know a lot of you, but for those I don't who are here, my name is Dave Kirby. I run the Central District for AGC Washington over in Yakima, but also work with our HR Roundtable. So for those of you here, glad you could join us. For those of you online, we've got the microphones all set up here, so we'll try to keep our noise to a minimum. And again, hopefully what you're seeing right now is Jim's presentation when he starts. For those folks online, if you have a question, I would encourage you to type that in. And Austin here from Hub as well will read your question to Jim as we go through this presentation. There's too many folks online to do this, but what I do like to do, at least in our room, is to go around very quickly and kind of introduce ourselves and where you're from. So again, I'll start. Dave Kirby with AGC.
Karen Perry with GLY.
Chris Mila with GLY.
Jacqueline Sip with Bailey Construction.
Rick Hadley with Quick Brothers.
Kim Epple, Employee Benefits Hub International.
Jean Mounsey, GLY.
Valerie Mitchell, Holiday Parks Incorporated.
Erica Beck from Holiday Parks.
Jake Olson, Northwest Construction.
Ashley Pretorius, GLY.
And Jim Fleece, Hub International.
Austin Beebe, Hub International, Yakima.
Great, fantastic. Well, again, thank you for those of you who fought the traffic to get down here. And I'll just remind those of you here, these microphones pick up everything. So, Jane, if for some reason you lean over and be like, man, this presentation is horrible, it'll probably pick it up on the deal. So,
good to know. You know me so well.
Anyway, so with that, I'm going to, in the interest of time, go ahead and get going. Are we having sound issues? Oh, okay, perfect. Yeah, and I'll remind you folks online, if for some reason your internet connection is not good enough, and we've had issues with that in the past, that your internet connection the sound is cutting out, on the meeting invite that I sent you, and if you need it, I'll have my email up, I can send it to you again. But on that meeting invite is also a call-in number. So you could theoretically turn the sound down on your computer, call in on the phone number that's on there, and be able to hear it from there if for some reason your internet connection is not picking up sound enough. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Jim, and we'll get going.
Great, thanks, Dave. Hey, Dave, start with, I'd like to say thank you to you and Associated General Contractors for hosting this event for us today. It's a timely and important event because with this new law upon us, we all are going to have to make decisions that are going to impact, all of our employees. And just to be very, very honest, I think it's a great law. I wish it would have been in effect when I had children. I would have loved to have had my wife take some time off or I take some time off, but that wasn't the case. And so I guess the message is I think it's a great law. I am concerned about the implementation. I think there might be some bugaboos. There may be a few things out there that may cause us all to pause a little bit. But big picture, I think we're going in the right direction. And in this current state of affairs in our country, it's nice to see something positive going on and all of us going in the right direction. So again, thank you, Dave. So with me today, that cabinet needs to be open. There we go. Okay, so on the line today we have Sarah Bogdan, and Sarah's our SME. She is a workforce productivity consultant. She's done this PowerPoint a number of times, but I was the local guy, so I got tabbed to do this today. Also with us from Hub, we have Kim Epple, a senior employee benefits representative, and Austin Beebe, one of our property and casualty specialists from the Yakima and Central Washington area. You may wonder, why am I doing this event? That's a really good question. Last January, February, as you may recall, there was a new law that came out for sick leave, and that was managed by L&I. And being the risk person, we had a local woman in Bothell, Jeannie Wilson, asked me, hey, Jim, you're the expert on L&I, so this is a new L&I law, and so you should do the PowerPoint, and you should do the presentation. So I said, okay, Jeannie, I would do anything for that lady. So we put on a PowerPoint presentation webinar for sick leave, and we had 500 attendees. So it was pretty big, probably one of the largest that Hub's ever done. So that went, in my opinion, it went well. I don't know if everybody else thought so. But we've had several of our clients ask us for updates. And so this new law is coming out. Hey, who's going to talk about it? Who can we know? And so I've had a great time learning I actually enjoyed learning the intricacies of the laws. It's kind of fascinating. So today, Sarah and I are going to be talking, and Austin and Kim are going to join in at their leisure. So what are we going to talk about today? We have 5 takeaways. You know, all good instructors should have 5 things you want to learn. What do we want to talk about is employer responsibilities. We're going to try to diagnose that premium thing a little bit. Talk about the leave itself. Do we go voluntary plan or do we not go voluntary plan? And what can we do as far as next steps? Okay, PFML, the basics. I just want to kind of go over the basics just to make sure we're all on the same page. So Washington paid family and medical leave will be administered by the Employment Security Department, the ESD. These are the same folks that do unemployment. So you can imagine that this program is going to be run very similar to the unemployment program. So you'll have a website, you'll put your information in, and they are going to write the premiums, or if you're going to do it yourself, a voluntary program. So I just want to kind of put this in context just a little bit. The program will be funded by premiums, okay, and it's 0.4% of the person's gross salary, okay, 0.4% of gross. So that's really 0.004 times whatever they're going to get paid. So I just wanted to, again, put this into some context. If you have a $100,000 employee, if you have somebody who's making 100 grand a year, times 0.004, so the premium is going to be $400 a year annual. Okay, so you can just easily break that down. If they're a $50,000 employee, $200. If they're 25,000, maybe a part-time employee, their premium is going to be down to $100. So just to give you a kind of a big picture, you know, what is this really going to cost me, or what is it going to cost us? This is the scary part as far as I'm concerned. Payroll deductions begin 2019, January 1st, 2019. Now they're paid quarterly, so we don't actually have to write a check, put stuff away, put money into the bank until, what is it, April 30th? You know, the 30 days after the end of the first quarter. That's going to be a big reporting day for everybody. So just to kind of lay it out there. So the basics. ESD is going to run it. We're talking about significant money, but not huge money. So it's going to be an impact, but it's not going to be a huge, significant impact. And this is going to hit fast. It's going to be around quickly. Okay, the basics. Leave. I am concerned a little bit about possible fraud. I think this may be something we have to watch out for. I think it's a great program, but I think we all have to be careful and manage it very, very well. Generally, 12 weeks of paid leave or 12 weeks of personal medical leave, okay? So what can you take your 12 weeks for? Baby bonding, that's the big one. That's one I like. I think that's great, a great option. If you're going to adopt or if you're going to have a child, each parent, if they're employed, can go ahead and take 12 weeks out and spend time with that kid. What a great thing.
And this, sorry, Jim, this applies equally to mothers and fathers, correct?
Correct.
Yep.
As long as they're employed and,
Yep.
and they can work it out with their employer.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but it's also adoptions as well, correct?
Correct. I forgot to mention. Yeah, that is also correct. Adoptions as well. So something else we can do is we can take care of a family member with a serious health condition. And this goes right back to exactly like the sick leave law. You know, if you remember that sick leave law, you can take care of anybody with sick leave. This is about the same deal. You can cover immediate family members. You can't go cousins and nephews and stuff like that, but you can go your own children, your parents, grandparents can take care of a grandchild, that kind of stuff. So I like that aspects of it too. So that's the family leave part of the act. So you get 12 weeks for family leave, and then you can get up to 12 weeks for your own personal medical condition. Serious health condition. This doesn't mean, flu and colds and stuff like that. This is, significant impacts. You're going to spend some time in the hospital. You're going to need some time to recover. Up to 12 weeks. So you get question.
Can you, unlike FMLA, if I have somebody who has a baby and they take 12 weeks off of the baby, 6 months later, they have to have a hip replaced. Can the same person take, if you've got a different type of condition?
Excellent question. Because they kind of break it up into two halves with the family leave and the personal leave, if you want to combine, you can get a total of 16 weeks. Now there is a provision, so you can take 12 weeks with your child, but then you only get an additional 4 weeks for yourself. So you can get a total of 16 weeks. That's something that I don't think is really well advertised or talked about. So everybody can essentially get 16 weeks of paid leave from their job for health reasons. Again, I think
12-month period.
in a 12-month period.
And it's
yes.
rolling, correct?
And it's a rolling 12-month. You guys are awesome. So everybody's read the same stuff I've read, it sounds like. So when you start the program is when you apply for the benefit. And then you have that rolling 12 months to take your essentially 16 weeks of leave. It also has it here, and this is something, again, I think is important. If there's complications for a pregnancy, you can get up to 18 weeks, which I think is a great thing. Because some women don't realize they will be bedridden until it's too late, and then all of a sudden at the end of their pregnancy, they're deciding, hey, I need to, I've been ordered for bed rest, so they can get a couple extra weeks, which I think is good. So, it's a lot of time.
So similarly, if they go on the 18 weeks for pregnancy, would they still have that additional 4 weeks if they had something else happen?
No, 18 weeks is the absolute maximum, is what you can go. And again, to put that into context, 18 weeks, 16 weeks is 4 months. 18 weeks is more than that, 6 months.
Jim, another quick question. Do you think that the ESD will be setting out some policy templates potentially?
For a voluntary program?
Mm-hmm.
I would hope that they're that organized. I would like to have great faith that they're going to be that organized. I think the process right now is pretty simple. You can submit just about anything. So if you have a PTO program and it's a better program than this, you can basically submit that, is what I've been told. And they're anxious for people to try. But we'll talk more about the voluntary program in a minute.
Okay, right.
Okay, so right now, 12 weeks of either or, family leave, personal medical leave, or a combination of 16 weeks. And if there's a pregnancy involved, it can go up to 18 weeks. So we know the time frame, which is significant. That's a lot of time. Okay, who gets to go on this new program? And it's very encompassing. Just about everybody in the state, unless you're a federal government employee, unless you're paid by Uncle Sam, you're covered by this act. Self-employed individuals, if you are a partner in a law firm, you can opt into the program because this is for employees. So if you are self-employed or a sole proprietor, you can jump into the program if you choose to, and I don't know why they wouldn't. It's a great program for those individuals. Federal employees, no. Federally recognized tribes may opt in, but they're not automatically enrolled in the program. So it's really easy to opt in. Basically, you just have to let the ESD know that you want to be part of the program and you are in with no questions asked. People who work in the state temporarily are not in. So if you're they call it localized. If you're localized, if you are doing the majority of your work or all of your work within the state of Washington, you are eligible for the program as long as you get in your requisite 820 hours, which I don't know how they got that number. But if you are a high wire utility lineman and you come in here just to repair after a storm and you're here for 3 or 4 weeks, no, it's not good enough. You have to be here for the majority of the time, is what they say. Okay. Make sure I'm not missing anything here. Oh, okay. You got a kick out of this, Mr. Maritime. Maritime employees, do they get covered by this program or not? My impression, my understanding of the law is they do not. Because as soon as you step on the gangway, you are controlled by the Coast Guard. You're responsible there because Washington state laws don't apply on the navigable waters. And so maritime employees don't fall into this either. But I would imagine most maritime employees are covered by collective bargaining agreements, and it wouldn't be an issue. They would have another course, another action, another way to get involved. Keep going. Okay, so those are some of the basics. It's an extensive program. It's a lengthy program. As far as I can see, it's a fairly reasonable program, fairly cheap to be involved with. Okay.
So can I ask a question? What about if they are Washington residents, but they are working out of state, but it's in a state that reciprocates Washington, like you pay unemployment to Washington?
Wow.
Does those hours still qualify for that program during that time?
I would think that you could opt into the program, but I think in that case, if you're not localized and you spend the majority of your time outside of Washington, I don't think you can qualify automatically for that program. It's almost like the guys on the tugboats out in the water. But I bet you could opt into the program. But that's a really good question. I think we could probably write that down and look that one up.
Let me know.
Employer responsibilities. What do we need to do in order to make this happen? And this is not the volunteer program. This is just simply a state-run program. What do the employers have to do? The employees, and I just took this out of the phase 2 of the rulemaking, the first draft. Second draft should be out next week or later this week. What do we have to do? We have to provide information. We have to provide information regularly, quarterly, to the website that hasn't quite made it up yet. We give them the employee's full name, social security number, or that ITIN number. If they don't have a social security number, workplace address, job title, start date, wages for the quarter, total hours worked. On top of that, the report is also supposed to contain the total amount of premiums paid for all employees. So you have to pick out information. This is on every single employee you're going to be reporting to the state now.
How often?
Quarterly.
Quarterly, sorry.
When you say to all employees, do you mean all Washington state employees, or do you mean national, or?
All Washington state employees. You know, if anybody was ever worried about Big Brother, this would be a great opportunity because this is a lot of information that people are turning over, a lot of data. I think it'll run smoothly. I think once we get the systems up and going, I think once all the, the software packages get updated and stuff, I think it's going to work pretty easily. But it just concerns me a little bit about how much information people are giving up. But I'm not.
So the start date is when they started working for the company, or when they started being enrolled in this program?
That's a really good question. I believe it's when they started working for the company.
And what happened? Sorry.
The officers, I was going to say, are they on a separate pay system? No, probably
Well, I
not.
know that you don't pay certain quarterly taxes
For the officers.
so I didn't know if they would fall under this one.
That's a really good question. Sarah, you got an answer for me on that one?
Could you repeat the question, please?
For officers of a company, must their data be reported to the state quarterly?
So we did have this question. I've had this question come up at other PASS, and I don't have an answer, unfortunately.
Okay, we'll figure it out. We'll get the information out.
Jim, I have another question.
Yep.
So is that most recent start date? And in many of our cases, we have itinerant craft. And so they probably wouldn't meet the eligibility requirements if they're coming and going, being laid off and rehired.
That's going to be a little tricky because the state wants to know where they're working because they want to accumulate that 820 hours for people that come and go a lot. And if you're in a voluntary program, you can work 500 hours at another company and come over here and finish off your 300 hours and meet the 320-hour minimum. So they just want to know when they're working for you quarter by quarter. And so you'll report quarter by quarter. If the person, it doesn't say leave date, but you'll just give the hours, if they've only worked for you for 3 months out of the, or excuse me, 2 months out of the quarter, then you just report whatever they worked.
So,
Well, this
go ahead.
is kind of crazy because do you not start collecting money from them right away? Isn't it a payroll deduction for them?
Yes, it is a payroll deduction.
So how do you qualify that? Do you start the day they start to work, or do you start the after 820 hours?
No, I think you start the day they start working for you. Is the day. If they've come and gone, that's fine. Every quarter you're going to report a new. If you have to report a new start date, you just say for this quarter they started on this date and this is the number of hours they worked.
Be the same as you would with any of the other.
Okay, well, but like I said, some of my guys work out of state and then they come back and then they work in state. So when they're working out of state, even though it's reciprocal state for a lot of things with Washington State, it wouldn't qualify?
So what you would need to do is the state is concerned about if they put in enough hours here, as long as they've worked for you for a long time and over the 1,200 hour rule, they can opt into the program. I think that the state is more concerned about people not wanting to pay into the system. And so if you opt in, you can pay, just do a payroll deduction and pay for those guys as they're working out of state. It doesn't say you can't do that. You just don't have to do that.
Okay, so it's up to them to opt in, or I guess I'm not quite sure exactly how you go about
It's up to the employer.
qualifying that.
Right. I guess you'd want to ask them if they want to opt in because this is a heck of a benefit for folks. And if they want to opt in, then you as the employer would have to report all the information. All right. Moving. Next slide. Okay, what else do we have to worry about here? Okay, that's awesome. Okay. Not only do we have to report information, we have to report all the data to the state. We also have to pay the premiums, collect and remit, which is pretty straightforward, but we're going to talk about that in a second. Required poster and notices. That just kind of seems real simple to say that, oh yeah, you got to put up a poster. But when you look at what's going to be on that poster, it's pretty interesting. On the poster, you must have the directions on how to file a claim, how to file a complaint, the employee's rights under the Paid Family Medical Leave Act, weekly benefit amount, and maximum paid weeks that they can take. And so this poster, there'll be a poster that gets generated by ESD that they'll send out. But if you do the voluntary plan, then you got to make your own poster. And it just seems pretty straightforward and easy, but boy, it's not going to be as simple. And then you have to get your poster approved. So it's a few steps you need to kind of follow in order to make sure that the poster is correct. What else? Voluntary plans. Just first time we're talking about it. Voluntary plans are available for employees who would like to operate their own program. Okay. It also says that we can use third parties. And it also says we can use insurance companies if any of them would step up, and we haven't heard that any insurance companies have stepped up and wanted to create a program yet. So if you were going to do a voluntary program, you were managing the whole program. It's going to be interesting. Okay. Questions about employee or employer responsibilities? Good. All right. Want to make sure we didn't jump ahead. Okay, let's talk about premiums. What are we gonna pay? Now this is where I think it gets a little confusing, but it's not insurmountable. It's not rocket science. It's just a few numbers, a little geometry, a little algebra. Okay, so we need to start collecting 4% of the gross wages. The premium is going to be split kind of on a 60-40, but it's a 63-37 split with the employer and the employee. So if we go back to our model of the $100,000 employee where they're going to cost you $400 a year, so the employer would contribute $148 a year to this employee, and the employee themselves would contribute $252. Okay, so there's a premium being paid, but a chunk of it is coming out of the employee's paycheck, and the employer is also coming up, ponying up some extra cash in order to make this all happen. Okay, so 64.
Doesn't that also have to do with the size of the company, though, for the employer to have to pay that?
Yes, and I'm going to talk about the under 50 folks here in just a minute. So you're just a second.
Okay.
So we have money to deal with. Okay, this is where it gets interesting. So family leave is paid entirely by the employee. So 1/3 of the premium goes right to family leave by the employee. 2/3 of the premium is for medical. Okay, and it's not that big a deal, but the 2/3 is now divided 55-45 between employee and employer. So the medical leave premium is split 45% by employee, 55% by employer. If you get it in on your computer program, it's not that big a deal, but it just is like, how did they come up with these numbers? And I kind of understand why, because the person is paying for their own family leave, so the employer is not paying for family leave, so that's a specific to them. And then they just wanted to break it up a little bit. So we'll delve into this a little deeper here in just a second. Okay, if you have fewer than 50 employees, you can petition to not have to pay the employee percentage of the premium.
Employer portion.
Employer, yeah. So if you have 50 employees or fewer, you don't have to pay. Now there's a caveat. There's also this small business assistant grant. And if you want to be eligible to be enrolled in the grant program, then you have to pay the employer percentage. So it's just a little bit of a catch. We're going to talk about, I don't want to get ahead of myself. Okay, so how do you know if you have 50 employees or more, or 50 employees or less? So the first year, the first time around, how many employees you report on, I think it's April 30th of 2019, that's going to be your premium for the year, because it's the first time we're going to do it. So if you have less than 50 employees, you can opt out. You don't have to pay the employee portion. If you have more, then you have to automatically. In subsequent years, if you have a company where your work in the number of your employees fluctuates in seasonal peaks and valleys, then they'll take an average, and then you can say, I'll take the average. I'm going to either opt in or I'm going to either opt out, and then that decision can be made on an annual basis.
So does that qualify with that ACH number that you can look at at a year time, and that kind of tells you how many employees, even though you may hire people and they're gone, you consistently have less than 50 employees.
What my understanding is this is a head count. Doesn't make any difference about how long they've been with you or not. If you happen to have a number of temporary employees on that date, then that could boost your number up and over. So
But it's on that date. I mean,
yes, on that date.
Because if you look over a year, you might have 200 employees, but they may have all left at different times, and you've rehired somebody and that type of thing.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
It's not exactly the same though as ACA, because on this you could have 50 employees working 20 hours a week and you would still be above the threshold, but on the ACA, right, they wouldn't average to 30 hours, so you would be below the ACA hourly requirement. So it's not the exact same number necessarily.
Okay, so it's not exactly that with that format.
Right.
No, it's literally whatever the number of people you have under your employment on that date. And then in subsequent years, they'll give you an average. They'll take the average of every time you report quarterly, they'll average the number of employees that you have. So you can go to 53 to 47. You know, you're going to fluctuate up and over that 50 number. Okay.
So is it a quarterly number? Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, it's a number you're going to report quarterly. You have to report it within 30 days of the end of the quarter. And whatever that number is that you declare you have for that quarter, that's your number, and that is how you determine if you're going to pay the extra employee premium. I'm trying to make it simple. It's not simple. It's confusing and kind of a pain.
Yeah, well, I think it's wrong because I think it should be what you pay in your pay period. If it's a weekly pay period and you're less than 50 employees, then that's your number, not what you have quarterly.
Right, but it's whatever your pay period is when you decide to send it into the ESD. It's the total number of employees you have at that moment. It's like a snapshot in time.
And this is all eligible employees.
Well, I know, but you may have lost some employees. They may not be your employees, but you're still going to report that you collected for them for the first 3 weeks of the quarter.
Right, but if they're not working for you at that moment, then they don't count towards your total.
But how do you qualify that? You put a start date and an end date?
No, apparently they don't require an end date. They just want to know the number of hours they worked for you. So if they only worked for you for 3 days, for 8 hours a day, that's all you'd have to report. Okay, if you have fewer than 150 employees, you can be eligible for one of these business assistant grants. And in the latest rulemaking there, they go in depth talking about how you determine how to apply for one of those grants and what's the information you have to have and that kind of stuff. So I'm just suspicious. I don't know how much money they're going to have. They probably don't know how much money they're going to have for these grants. If you have to have 3 of your employees out and you have to have replacement workers in there for them, that's the idea. That's what these little grants are going to help. But you have to be less than 150 employees. Okay, here we go again. Premium example. All right, so now this is our $100,000 a year employee, but we're going to break it down to they usually work 50 weeks in a year, so this is just 1 week to make $2,000 a week. So your total premium is $8. It's not a lot. Okay, so first of all, 1/3 is going to go to paid family leave, and that's going to equate to $2.66. 2/3 is going to go to medical leave. So there's a $5.34. Now the medical leave is the part that gets divided 55-45. So the employer pays a little extra. They pay $2.90, 94 cents. The employee, $2.40. So total, the employee is paying $5. The employer is paying $3. Just rounding it up just a little bit. So I just wanted to demonstrate and kind of reiterate, it's 1/3, 2/3, 2/3 again gets divided up 55-45. We're not talking huge numbers, but if you have a good number of employees, this could add up pretty darn quick. Okay, Sarah, are you online?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Can everyone hear me okay?
Oh, loud and clear.
Okay, great. This is an example of how we see leave laws as well as the new Washington Paid Family and Medical Leave Program and company policies interact. And certainly it can be complicated. So we see here it could trigger several different programs, and we'll talk about them in two categories. So one being job protection, which is an unpaid, and then those that are income replacement. As we start at the top of this chart and we see the green bar, this is the federal FMLA. So again, the federal unpaid FMLA leave, which has eligibility requirements, as we know, of 1,250 hours worked and at least 1 year of service. So we could have an employee who is out for the maternity portion of their leave, taking that FMLA time. They have that protection, as well as protection under Washington's pregnancy disability. During that time, their job is protected. And as we see it move to the bonding portion of leave, FMLA continues to run, as well as the Washington state version of FMLA, because Washington's state version of FMLA does not include pregnancy as a serious health condition, because Washington has that separate pregnancy disability protection. So with that, we can see there's several job protections running at the same time. So that can be a level of complication. Additionally, with that, Washington Paid Family Medical Leave, which is the yellow bar here, has different eligibility requirements than we know FMLA does. So certainly that's something to keep in mind when we're looking at employees going out on leave. And you can see here in this example, there's 6 weeks of Washington paid family for that normal recovery time from pregnancy, as well as 10 weeks of additional leave for the bonding portion. And that's where we talked about that combined 16-week total for leave under Washington paid family, if it's for your own serious health condition, for the medical portion, and then for the family portion, which includes the bonding. Now, how does the Washington paid family interact with other paid programs we may have as an employer? So what about company-sponsored STD plans? How would the law interact with that? Now, we haven't seen guidance yet from the state regarding short-term disability programs that a company may offer, but what we do know is we can lean on past experience, say from California, who has their own state disability program, and others. So if the company policy has benefits that would differ or maybe meet what the state program is, that's where you could see a company STD program also be aligned. So for example, many short-term disability plans have a 26-week maximum benefit. So if someone is out on a leave for their own serious health condition that extends past the 12 weeks of medical leave offered under Washington Paid Family Medical, a short-term disability plan through the employer could help to support an employee as they're still out and need that income replacement. And also with the maximums, we could see some overlap here as well. The Washington Paid Family Medical Leave has a maximum of $1,000, and many short-term disability policies do have a higher maximum. And this is especially useful for when you look at higher compensated employees. And outside of that, we also see company paid parental. So this is illustrative, and it may be something that your company offers is a paid parental leave program, but this is really a time where you need to look at those policies and programs as well to see how they all align. This slide really illustrates, one, how all of these programs could interact, but also it's a great chance to look at your programs as a company and make sure they're aligned as this new law is coming into effect, and think about how it could impact other programs that you may offer as an employer.
Any questions about multiple plans for Sarah? It's going to take a while to kind of dissect this and slice it up and determine what is best. One thing in the PFMLA is the employee is engaged and gets to decide what they're going to take when. Like the FMLA and the PFMLA all run at the same time. Those are concurrent programs. The other programs aren't. So if a person would need to take a pregnancy leave, they can decide, I'm going to take pregnancy leave first, then I'm going to take my company paid leave, and then I'm going to take my PFML. Okay, moving on. Boom, voluntary plan. This is why we all came. I think that's so crazy. I think Thank you, Sarah. Okay, volunteer plans. If we choose to, we can create our own plan. The caveat is it has to be as good or better than the state program. Very simply stated, some companies, as employees, get harder to find. Employment is at an all-time high. Unemployment is at an all-time low. Employees are getting harder to find. So do we want to create great programs and great family leave programs in order to retain employees? That's going to be a decision, obviously every employer is going to have to make. So the voluntary plan must offer the same or greater duration of leave. That's a little misguiding because on the next couple slides you'll see that you might be able to sweeten the pot a little bit and entice your employees to come back early as long as you paid them the same amount that they would have earned had they taken the full leave. We'll talk about that in a second. But you just can't be significantly less than 6 weeks in a 12-week situation. Okay, offer equal or better wage replacements. The state plan offers 90%.
Up to $1,000 a week.
Yes. So if you have an employee making more than $100,000, then they're only going to make $1,000 a week. And typically that would, depending on benefits, it could be anywhere from $1,500 to $1,900 that they would have made otherwise, if they were working every day. Up to $1,000 a week. So there is a maximum, and so that's going to be the rub. So do companies want to be able to pay their employees more? A couple of the concerns are, the next one, you have to withhold the same or less from their paycheck. So you can only take out that little chunk out of their paycheck. And if you want to pay them more, where's that money going to come from? It's going to come out of the company's profits. So if the company wants to pay more, the employees are contributing the same amount as the state plan. And if you want to exceed the state plan, the company is going to be the one ponying up the extra money. Because right now, the insurance companies aren't stepping up to take, to create new plans for us. So somebody's got to pay. It's going to be the companies. If you want to give a better program, it's coming out of your pocket. Cover the same events, the same kind of stuff. Birth of a child, adoption of a child, illness of a family member, personal illness. And it's got to apply, obviously, all benefits have to apply to everybody. Okay, so the voluntary plan, there's some caveats. It sounds like a great idea, but it's going to be a lot of work. It's going to be a lot of work. Come on. Okay. Okay, so you as an employer, you get to decide, do you want to cover the medical side or the paid family leave side? You can choose either side you want to cover, either way, but it must be the same or better as the state plan. You have to have your plan pre-approved, and if you want to start right away, they're accepting those plans right now. You can get on the website and submit a plan. It has a form to fill out. There's an application fee of $250. You collect the premiums if you're an employer and you want to do your voluntary plan. You hang on to the money, you put it in an account, you develop a little trust or something, and then that money stays and grows and builds. And then the employees contact you directly. They don't have to go to the state. Now, there's a couple of caveats. One thing you have to do is every time you have an employee apply, you have to go calculate what the state benefit would be, and you have to prove to the state that you're giving a better benefit. So it's another little thing you got to do, one more little hitch, so it's just not a straight deal. So the state still is going to know about all this information.
Can I just reword that? So if we are doing it ourselves,
Yep.
every single employee that taps into it, I have to go back to the state to show them I'm paying more to calculate what they would pay.
Yes, because you have to
For
prove
for eternity.
for eternity.
Okay.
Eternity or longer.
That's the line. Okay.
Yeah.
So you can have a third-party organization manage this program for you. If, somebody steps up and wants to start a new business, this is a great business opportunity
Yeah.
for somebody. The legal burden still falls on the employer. So if you hire a third party and they screw things up, it's still you that gets, talked to and addressed by the state. And this is what I talked about earlier. You can incentivize your employees to come back early. So the state says the plan is 12 weeks. Let's do the pregnancy. 12 weeks for pregnancy leave. If you have a voluntary plan and you put this into your plan that you would like to incentivize your employees to come back early, you're going to figure out what you would have paid them during those 12 weeks, and you can incentivize them to come back early, let's say at 10 weeks or 8 weeks. It can't be less than half. So you have to give them a minimum of 6 weeks off, and they collect the wages they would have made over 12 weeks. So you can incentivize to motivate your employees to come back early. Personally, I don't know if that's going to really apply.
Family leave.
That's on both family and paid medical.
And so I'm thinking like an employee. If I were on family or medical leave and I wanted to come back early, is the state, if I'm on the state's plan, are they going to pay me regardless of what I do?
The state plan, no, they're only going to pay you for the number of weeks you're out. You have to be on a voluntary plan, and your employer has to agree to that, and it has to be part of the plan. And one more thing. It's hard to imagine all the different variations that you could come up with this incentive program. Every time you want to resubmit or modify your plan with the state, it's another $250. So if you wanted to say, instead of a 10-week incentive plan, we're going to put in an 8-week incentive plan, it's another $250 to the state. It's just a ka-ching, cash machine for the state. So voluntary plans, some advantages. You get to control how it works. You're completely managing your money. You still have the reporting requirements. So quarterly, you got to tell them how many employees you have. You got to give them all their names, all their start dates, how many hours they've worked, the whole ball of wax. So even if you have a voluntary plan, you still are reporting all your data to the state. Which may be a reason why some people may have thought about a voluntary plan so they wouldn't have to report. That's not the case. You still have to tell everybody. Is that clear? Yeah. Okay, you have to offer at least half of the entitlement. Oh, I already talked about this. I got ahead of myself. So you can incentivize how you so see fit. Okay, next steps. We're almost done. Need to prepare to withhold premiums. Now, I listened into a state webinar. I was in Spokane on business. And the state says that all of the usual payroll programs are aware of this new state law and they're working on it. And one of the people called in and said, I think it was Oracle or somebody, no, Oracle doesn't know anything about this. And then the woman got into a discussion with the state representative saying, the state lady was saying, no, we've talked to Oracle. The other one was, no, we've talked to Oracle. They haven't heard anything about this. They have no clue. So I would encourage everyone, whatever your payroll program is, is to contact that company, make sure they're fully aware of this program. Make sure they know that come January 1st, you are going to be taking a little bit of cash out of their employees' pockets. Okay, I do think the hard part is going to be all the reporting. I think the whole withholding premiums will be easy. But again, it's going to be up to your payroll program, whatever you're going to be using. It's going to be a lot of information to make available. And if you don't do it properly, of course, there's a fine system where you could be fined by the state if you don't do it. Their standards. Okay, there's a lot of information coming out of the state. I mean, literally, we're waiting day by day for more rulemakings as they come out. Some things available on their websites. And as a company, you need to decide if you're going to do a voluntary plan or not. Now, this is the nice thing. If you decide to opt out of a voluntary plan, it's just a 30-day notice to the state. So literally, you could explore a voluntary plan. You could go through and jump through all the hoops and find out what exactly has to happen. And then you could decide in February, hey, this isn't going to work. I'm going to withdraw, and you can get right back into the state plan before the end of the first quarter. That's one nice thing.
So if you're in the state plan and somebody is taking this leave, they can't do it until 2020. Is that what I've heard?
Yes, that's correct. We start paying the premiums January 1, 2019, and then there's probably going to be a lot of babies born in 2020. Yeah, I would. I'm honest. If this plan were available when my child
January to be specific, right?
I don't know if you can do that.
So I know this doesn't really qualify for this, but so we have healthcare insurance that the employee pays a portion and we pay a portion. So when they're off during this time, since that money is going directly to them, how do we get our money to pay for their health care while they're gone? Because they're not technically working.
Correct. My understanding is that you have to maintain benefits. Sarah, is that correct?
Yes, you do have to maintain benefits while they're out on this leave. But to your point, because the benefits are coming, if you're in the state plan straight from the state and you're not going to be seeing any of that, you'd have to coordinate just like on unpaid FMLA or other leaves of absence with employees about how those benefit contributions that they need to make will be maintained while they're out on leave. So normally that's through either a prepay, which is a least likely used option. Some employers will allow, again, you're getting those contributions, say on a monthly basis from the employee, or you're letting the employee pay those contributions back once they return from leave.
Okay.
And just a
So there isn't an issue with the insurance companies, and so they're all on board with this then too. Because it seems like there's stuff written in our insurance policies that they have to be working, and I mean they have certain stipulations too.
Yes, they should comply with all the laws. I would recommend that if your language in your plans should align to say that they will cover any federal and state law. So I would make sure that is aligned with your insurance carriers as well and confirm that they're aware and that language is appropriate in your documentation as well.
And I just want to clarify that we are collecting and remitting both the employer and the employee premiums beginning in 2019, not just the employer premiums. It's both.
Yes. And you make the payment to the state quarterly. You need to start making those deductions early.
And then my understanding is that when an employee actually makes a claim to ESD, not to the employer if you're on the state-run plan.
Yes.
And they are the ones who make the decision about whether or not to.
When they're going to go out. Now, in the latest rulemaking phase, phase 3, draft 1, it does talk about that in being a Coast Guard term, what's practicable.
Yeah.
And making notice as quickly as possible. So in the example of a automobile accident, if you're the person in the wreck, your spouse won't be able to get written notice, including text messages. That counts as written notice now. I got a kick out of that. That has to be done within a day or two, would be practicable. Everything else, if you're planning to adopt or planning to have a baby, then it's like a 30-day notice, a written notice to the employer.
Question on the 90%. I could see several ways of calculating that. Is it the current wage? Is it the wage as it was reported on the last quarterly report? Or like the SD, will they establish a base year that would represent the gross income for that individual?
Sarah, has that come up before?
Yeah, could you clarify the question?
How will they calculate the paid leave amount at 90% of gross income, or 90% of their income? Will that be their income at the time they go on leave?
Yeah, so it's 90% of their average weekly wages, and I believe it looks at the last 4 completed calendar quarters in terms of calculating that average weekly wage. But I would need to confirm on that piece, but it is the average weekly wage, and it's up to that maximum of $1,000.
That would make sense.
I am just curious. I know everyone represents a number of different employers. Just a show of hands, is anyone considering the voluntary plan? One? It doesn't surprise me. I think you're a trailblazer, and I applaud you for doing that. I think it's going to be a lot of work, but obviously your company has reasons why they would like to do that. So, just for those on the phone, we had one individual out of 12 raise their hand for the voluntary program. That kind of wraps up this end of the PFMLA. Again, we have Kim Eppel, Senior Vice President of Employee Benefits, with us, and Austin Beebe. If people want to talk and ask a few extra questions, they're going to be moving around for a little bit.
And we do have a cheat sheet that we'll hand out to everyone, just a one-pager that kind of outlines the benefits, the rules, the plans, everything like that for you. So feel free to take that, take a look at it. Obviously, it's a changing program, so by 2019, it may have changed 13 different times. So it's a working document, but at least it'll give you sort of a brief outline of what we're expecting and at least what we think now is going to be happening.
So if you do the state plan, is it my understanding that all decisions then are made then by the state, kind of like L&I? I mean, they make the decision whether the claim is accepted
valid or not, right?
And then they'll calculate the amount that person will be paid.
Yep.
And all that.
Yeah. And there's also a provision for anti-discrimination. And so if people, if you think you have kind of a goofball who might be abusing the system and you may want to, file a complaint with the state or something on those lines, you got to be real careful, because it would be very simple and easy for them to claim discrimination for a variety of reasons. And then we all know what happens when companies get sued for discrimination.
And the big thing we've been seeing recently is retaliation. So taking that company leave, taking that paid time leave off, and then coming back to the company and getting fired or demoted or not getting the promotion you were expecting. There's real big issues with retaliation now, so just be aware of that.
It's interesting. There's a list of qualified medical providers or personnel that can verify or certify that you're having an issue. It's an extensive list, and literally you could have someone decide to go out every Friday with a migraine, and there's not much you can do about it. And they can claim, they don't say you get 12 weeks, but you can take that in 8-hour increments. So you could say, I'm not feeling good for the next couple of days, salmon season is upon us. or whatever. So I think we need to be able to, just spend a lot of time making sure we're on the right page with our employees, because I think this has the potential for some fraud.
So ESD isn't requiring medical certification similar to what we are allowed to ask for with FMLA, right?
Right. Huh. Well, they may. There is language in some of the statutes talking about they may request doctor's notes, they may request a birth certificate, they may request. And so the state will hopefully do a good job of what they call certification of those illnesses.
So the voluntary plan, then we can require that we can do whatever we can require that they do.
Right, and that's got to be part of your plan you submit to them. So you can say, if you're going to go out, you need to provide X, Y, and Z.
And then if there's a dispute between employee and employer, do the state come in to mediate at all, or no? I mean, what happens?
Only if they file a complaint.
Only if.
Yeah. So otherwise, it would be you and your employees. But if they do complain, then that kind of brings the whole state apparente falling on you. Great. Hey, I appreciate your time again. Thank you, AGC, for hosting.
Yeah, no, thank you for being here. Thanks to everybody who was online today. Hopefully, I think sound-wise, it was pretty good. Austin, we didn't have any super big issues. If you are here, don't forget to grab a parking deal from me to get out of that parking lot. So our next quarterly meeting is, I don't have it exactly in my head. I think it would land on January 22nd, but watch your calendar. Again, it's that fourth Tuesday of the month. So we'll look to have it then. So, thanks.
We do have one question online here.
Oh.
Tracy Allen, you mentioned CBAs with reference to a maritime waiver. Are there standard waivers for other CBAs unions?
They have a waiver that's in effect right now if your plan was approved before October 19th, 2017, which means it would have just expired. So if you have a collective bargaining agreement that's in effect, then this plan does not impact you until your collective bargaining agreement expires. And so the exemption is merely, basically a placeholder until your new contracts come into effect. But they don't have to do anything until then, which is nice for those guys. Good.
Great. Thanks again.
All right.
Thank you.
And there's a little box over here if you need to put your lunch box in there. Who parking pass? Yep. For your
Working hard on the
You said third Tuesday.
Please.
Yeah.
I think it might be the 29th.
Oh, really enjoying this one.
This is the first, that would make the first a Tuesday. First, 8, oh, you're right. Yeah, you're right. Our flight navigator.
So, but there's not a minimum time. As we work on, so they don't have
To her appointment, she was like,
Any questions, concerns?
yeah, but I think you have a question where we kind of wait.
Sure, I might be able to help.
Ignore it.
and it would be the same.
Presented a number of times.
So you'll have one union sign lines. So they're exempt. However, they only cover basically county. So anytime someone's if we have any work
I
in
know Jim would know the answer.
north or south,
Sales.
and then we sign. And they can send employees to the other territory, but you have to pay the other So how would that work for here? If they're exempt when they're at their home, and what do we do when they're